Hi everyone, my name is Kate and I'm here to give a book talk on three very different but unique and amazing books that share one common theme. And let me tell you what that is: overcoming hardship. So my question is, have you ever experienced hardship in your life, and how do you overcome it? And so in the case of these three books, they actually use their creativity. The books I want to share with you today are photographic, about the life of Graciela Iturbide by Isabel Quintero and Zeke Pina. It's a graphic novel, amazing. Second book, here we go, The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. And last but not least, we have The Unwanted, Stories of the Syrian Refugees, and it's written and illustrated by Don Brown. So let me start with photographic. What is beautiful about this book is that it is a graphic novel, but her photographs are actually interspersed within the graphic novel. So it makes it a very unique unraveling of her life. This particular photographer was born in 1952. She was born the eldest of 13 children, and she was born to a well-to-do, very traditional family. So she followed a traditional route in her life. She was married when she was 19, and she had 3 children by her early 20s. Tragedy struck, and it struck when her daughter died. So once again, we return to our theme of overcoming hardship. How does Graciela overcome the death of a beloved child? And she actually uses her creativity to do that. So she rejects the way she was brought up, and she enrolls into film school, and she ends up becoming the assistant to a very, very famous still photographer called Bravo. And she is an icon in the photographic world today, and through her works. She has photographed birds and death, and she has gone to LA and many places in Mexico. And she is very respectful of the people that she photographs. This is a very hopeful book. It shows how she came to terms with her own grief and her own loss through branching out, through trying something new. The pictures, I'm not sure if you can see any of them, but her photographs are in here, and they're just stunning. So if anyone likes graphic novels, this is for you. And if you don't like graphic novels, it's still for you. It's a biography of this person's life, and she was born in 1942, and she has traveled and been commissioned to do pieces like all over the world. I highly recommend this book. This next book is also a graphic novel. It is a work of non-fiction, and it's unusual in that it is illustrated and written by the same person, Don Brown. And the title, if you can see, is called The Unwanted, Stories of Syrian Refugees. What is really beautiful about this book is that it is not, it does not draw on political and religious lines. It tells the stories of the refugees. Since civil war erupted in 2011, there are over 5.5 million Syrian refugees that are registered in the UN. And so obviously we know that there are countless others that are not registered in the UN, but also unfortunately that would have died under very perilous circumstances trying to escape. The protagonist that I wanted to draw your attention to starts in the very beginning of this book. Can you see her? She is a 10-year-old little girl playing very happily in Darija. The first protest took place in the city of Daria in March 2011 against the cruel Syrian president Bashar al-Assad. And basically what happened was that some teenage boys wrote on a wall in Arabic, "Down with the regime." They were subsequently arrested, they were tortured, they were imprisoned, and then there were protests, naturally, about this occurrence, in which 61 people died. And then throughout the whole of the country, a civil war basically erupted. But the girl that I want to follow in this book as the main character is playing in Daria. She escapes. She's 10 years old. Dawn Brown tells us that she learns English, that she takes up skating, that she loves Halloween, that she ends up speaking and reading English better than Arabic. And the quote that I loved in this book was, "Her future is now." So again, we see this theme of people overcoming hardship. So please pick up this book. It's a work of non-fiction. It is a graphic novel. It is very, very topical. It is in the news. It is current news right now, and it is called The Unwanted: Stories of the Syrian Refugees, and it is written and illustrated by Dawn Brown. Lastly, we have a work of fiction, The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. The main protagonist is Charlie. It opens by him writing to someone he knows but wants to remain anonymous to. And so throughout the book, it starts with "Dear Friend," and then the letters end with "Love, Charlie." This book starts with Charlie telling this friend that his best friend Michael committed suicide last year, and that he has no friends, and that he is starting high school tomorrow. So again, this theme of overcoming hardship comes into play. What ends up happening to Charlie? Does he make any friends? And so we learn that in fact he does. At a football game, he gets to sit beside Patrick and Sam, who he initially thinks are dating, but are actually stepbrother and stepsister. Patrick turns out to be gay, and Sam becomes his major love interest. She, in turn, though, is not interested in Charlie. She does, in fact, end up dating a boy in college called Craig. This book covers a lot of ground. Charlie's sister has a boyfriend, and she ends up getting pregnant, and she hopes that she can keep it, but the boyfriend doesn't want to know her. And so Charlie in this book ends up driving her. He's 15, but he drives. He's just got his permit, so he drives her to the abortion clinic, stays with her, wraps her up in blankets and everything for the drive back. Charlie is sensitive. He's thoughtful. He gives beautiful thoughtful Christmas gifts. He is obviously in his writing very articulate. This book is full of hope. So although it started off without Charlie making friends, he does end up making friends. One of the sadnesses that is discovered is that when he does end up on the last night helping Sam to pack her things before she goes off to college, and they start kissing and making out, and then all of a sudden he has these flashbacks, and his beloved Aunt Helen, who had gone to live with them, she was a very troubled woman, she had died when he was 7, and he had blamed himself for her death because she had gone out to buy him his second Christmas gift on Christmas Eve, which was his birthday. And she was in a car wreck and she died. But anyway, he had flashbacks, and this book reveals basically that Charlie was sexually abused by his Aunt Helen. So all of his friends leave for college. His parents find him catatonic and naked, and he ends up in a mental hospital for 2 months. So again, we see that there was a lot of overcoming hardship in this book, and Charlie does that so wonderfully, and his friends rally around him, and he ends up you know, letting go and moving on and moving forward. So it is a book full of hope. Each one of these main characters in the book overcame hardship. Graciela suffered the loss and death of her daughter. Charlie suffered the suicide of his friend Michael, and then also being sexually molested by his Aunt Helen. And this little girl in Unwanted, in Daria, obviously suffered huge loss, the loss of her home, and she fled as a refugee, and she found hope. She found hope in a new life. So all of these cover a common theme that's really, really worthwhile. So I highly recommend these 3 books. Again, The Unwanted, stories of the Syrian refugees. It is written and illustrated by Don Brown. Secondly, we have The Perks of Being a Wallflower. It is a work of fiction, and it is by Stephen Chbosky. And then lastly, but in no way least, we have another graphic novel, and that is by Isabel Quintero and Zeke Pina, and that is called Photographic, The Life of Graciela Iturbide. I highly recommend these 3 books. Thank you.